Hey, welcome everyone to the Archicad User Monthly Training Case Study webinar. My name is Eric Bobrow. This is April 2022, and my special guest today is Mark Benner, architect from Chicago. How are you doing, Mark?
Doing real well, thanks. Good afternoon.
So I know you've got a lot to show and share with us today. I want to make sure everyone can hear us. So you can communicate if you're got the go to webinar, the chat panel. And I see Marek says no sound, but that was a couple of minutes ago. All right. Okay. And Rich says loud and clear. Okay. So we're underway. Let us know where you're calling in from. I know Rich is from down in Australia, and Doug in Brooklyn, Ian from Scotland. All right, so we've already got 3 continents in there. Marek is, I'm trying to remember if you're in local to California, I can't remember. And Dwight from Ontario, Pierre from London. Hey, Pierre. Michael from Maine, Moran from Connecticut. All right, so I won't go on and read it. We've got over 50 people on the line right now. We'll probably get up to 100 or more. But we can get going. If you're in the Archicad coaching program, you can communicate through the Slack channel in the Archicad in the coaching calls channel. That'll be fine. I'll pay attention to that as well. So while we're underway, if you have some questions or things that you want to comment on, if there's something that you find pretty interesting, feel free to share that. And if there are questions, I will feed them in to Mark at the appropriate time. So Mark, we've known each other for quite a few years. I know you were, in addition to being an architect, you were also an Archicad evangelist and even a reseller back in the 90s. Is that, am I remembering correctly?
That is correct.
Yeah. So you go back a long ways, just like I do. Now, these days, you're working, are you a sole practitioner or do you have a team?
Officially, I'm a sole practitioner, but I use a good deal of outsourcing to cover a lot of my production work. And I'm also a member of a consortium. I kind of lead a consortium of several other architects, and we share resources. And big project comes in, we can scale up or what we need to execute.
Okay, all right. Well, tell us a little bit professionally of your journey, to get here in terms of architecture and in terms of Archicad, and then, tell us what we're going to be seeing today during the session.
Sure, I put a little something together just to kind of lead us through that. We'll just kick this off here. So I kind of think of it as impact architecture, using skills and tools and talents to make an impact socially and make a difference to people. So I started off my career as a rough framing carpenter, which kind of piqued my interest in construction. I joined while I was at school at Lawrence Technological University for architecture school. I engaged with Archicad version 4.55, I think is one of the earliest available releases. And then I was introduced to a group called Appalachian Service Project. That was a group that went down and we did, it was a mission to make homes warmer, safer, and drier. And that kind of was my on into the helping others with their environment. I was then a member of a commercial design build team in Wixom. And then I moved to Chicago in '95 and joined a custom rental design build firm there. And then on top of that, I'm a board member with a group called Solid Rock Carpenters, and that's the group that does the affordable housing kind of in a unique way. So I mentioned I'm part of basically an architects consortium. We have a shared Archicad BIM cloud environment. We use in-house and outsourced production talent. In fact, we're sponsoring a Ukrainian refugee, her work visa. So we're about, we think, 2 to 3 weeks away from having she and her son move here to Chicago and join our team. She's got phenomenal Archicad skills, just a really great portfolio that we're working with. I also do Archicad consulting and coaching. So I thought I'd start off with a few examples of some of my work. Just blow through these really quickly, but starts off with some residential work. And I'll just kind of describe it as we go through these. I also do a lot of work in motion, so I model in Archicad and in twin motion for a few examples of those. Styles. This is a spec. We just permit for this. We're going to break the next down in north. So the developer on this project, we ran into a bit of a screw with a neighbor. The servant placed the neighbor's garage 2 feet on property, the neighbor's property.
Hold on a second, Mark. There's a comment, well, 2 comments. One from Peter Toohey, I know you know well, saying not seeing the work. Now I'm seeing it on screen. I'm wondering if anyone else is having a problem. This is a video, so it's going to be choppy because it's trying to create lots of images on screen, and the webinar software and the internet connection is only going to pick up, 1 or 2 frames a second.
Gotcha.
So Steve Pribble says, I see the videos, but Michael, but I'm finding that the audio has been breaking up a little bit. And someone mentioned, a couple of people have mentioned the audio. So I guess we're going to have to live with that a little bit while you're showing the video, because your internet connection is trying to do both. But once you get into Archicad itself, I think we will have less of an issue.
Okay. This doesn't. Just wanted to show a few of the commercial.
Now, since I think my audio probably would come through with less choppiness, I'll just say that you were one of the first that I knew of who took the Archicad models into twin motion. We had you as a guest in 2019 on Archicad User as one of several people showing different visualization tools, and you were one of the first to do twin motion. And I must say that the quality level of the images is, leaps and bounds above what you showed 3 years ago. I'm sure that's a combination of your skill increasing, as well as twin motion itself, just having, better textures and lighting and human figures. So it's interesting to see this.
I believe that is the case.
So these are all obviously Archicad models that are taken into twin motion in this case for visualization. We'll want to talk a little bit about your workflow and when you take things into twin motion. Is it very early on? Is it waiting for a while? Do you regularly update the twin motion model? Those sort of questions.
Sure, happy to. So those are a few examples of what we're going to kind of go over in this presentation today. Let's back out of that. We'll switch over to Archicad. So this is a project that is just about ready to go in for permit. So we're pretty far along here. We've got a few things yet to coordinate. I've got engineering arriving shortly and structure to follow as well. But I thought it might be interesting to see some of these views that we use to bring this together. So this is the Archicad master template, which I've modified to do a number of things. And since I consult with people, with other architects on best practices, I really like the function and the structure that this provides. Rather than trying to train people on how to create the different layouts that may be part of a certain practice's workflow, I think it's great to build that in right into the template. So in this instance, we have layouts for the presentation plans, construction documents, and the one that I added is portfolio, because I want to be able to share these projects with future prospects, but I also want to protect the image, the identity, and of my clients. And so I'll just show you that. Basically, it just removes any specific reference to a client's name. It does have the city and state that it goes to, but it makes this a presentable document that doesn't tip to whose house it is.
Very, very interesting adaptation there. Thinking ahead for how you want to be able to share it. So for those of you who don't know, and I assume most of you who are on these Archicad user calls are at least familiar with the fact that I created Master Template with an architect named Scott Bulmer many years ago, and have been developing it over the years. So this is a project startup kit that sets up a lot of things to make it faster and easier to get good quality projects run and output. So Mark, you've been using that and you've been just adapting it, which is a natural part of it. You're extending some of the things and just making it suit your office perfectly. So just wanted to let you know, and in case anyone has a question about Master Template, I'll bring that up where appropriate.
And I can wholeheartly recommend it. It's just a huge start if you're just getting started with Archicad or trying to make the most of it. I think Master Template gives you a huge advantage going forward. And I train Archicad users on a daily basis, and this just gives such a great pathway for them to follow rather than having to do all of the legwork to create all this structure. They can jump in and start creating right from the day one. So that's the portfolio view. So I typically start with a presentation set of drawings. Sometimes I'll do a rendering on this cover. This one is kind of quick and dirty, so we didn't get around to doing a rendering, but we always do analysis. We do things like, you show the existing conditions of the property. In this particular municipality, they have a daylight requirement, so we have a little daylight envelope section here that shows the bounds for the vertical. I also like to bring in, this is a wind rose, shows the wind conditions throughout the year, and that's just to understand what kind of screening we may need. There's also a solar dial here that tells you the path, gives you the solar path over the course of the year. And then of course all the bulk and zoning calculations get presented on this one as well. And then as we get into the project, site plan shows out of the house. And this one, this is actually a double lot. So when I first designed this, the garages were much more compact, and we wanted to use the width of the lot. So we ended up stretching this out quite a bit. The developer and I, we really worked on it. We created some interesting things. So we have this way, which is going to become a bit of a grilling porch. It's adjacent to the kitchen. It just makes better use of the lot, and it presents better in the elevation. And this is the elevation view. And this is the realistic version to take advantage of the textures that are built into Archicad. So more than just the shaded model. We actually have the rendered textures here. We're doing some fun things like we've got these eyebrow windows. And those were a bit of a challenge because the eyebrow window is a part, but I hate the window that comes with it. So I overlaid, I stacked in front of the eyebrow window a separate wall that I could put my own window into, and it gives us this kind of hybrid approach.
You have a sketch, a rendering effect on this. So this is how are you getting this overlaid? Are you doing a graphic override for the line work?
Yeah. So any of the 3D work for the presentation view, I use a graphic override to achieve that sketchy line appearance.
Can
along the
you
bottom.
bring up the source image, and let's just bring this up. I always like to highlight when there's something unusual in setup so people can understand it. So you've right-clicked on the drawing on the sheet. Now we're looking at the actual live elevation. So if you were to select any of those elements like windows or columns, they are real Archicad elements, and yet they look, you know, sketchy. So what, show the graphic override that you have active.
So this one, how did I do that? I think that's built, I actually used the renovation filters for that.
Now I see down in your bottom tab, it says presentation something under graphic override.
Right. Yeah. I don't know why it's not showing up.
So if you click on the in the bottom tab where it says presentation for the graphic overrides there. No, that's the model view option. But the next one over to the right is presentation elevation sketchy, which is one of the built-in ones from master template. And if you just open up the setting by clicking the icon next to it, there, and it says sketchy lines, and the definition right now is just turn all the line types sketchy. Now you can be more specific and say I only want walls to be sketchy but not windows, you know, for example. You can do that, but that's what's giving this effect. And obviously when you zoom in on it, it looks a little bit odd, but when you look at it from a little bit of a distance, it just you know, adds a certain hand.
Yeah, I like to use that. My clients will look at a drawing like this and think all the decisions have been made. I can't change anything. And so to me, this sketchy line is a signal to them. As refined as this drawing is, I'm letting them know from the sketchy lines, and we talk about this in the meeting, that it's still time to change. This is the best time to change in front of, you know, actually breaking ground and having to take things apart. This is a good time to consider those changes. So it's just a visual signal, part of the communication with them.
So there's a question about the background for the elevation. So you have a bunch of tree silhouettes as well as a gradated color thing. So what is that? Is that a picture?
Yeah, this is there's a I'm trying to remember the name of the group. There's an artist who developed sketchy on. So he has trees and floor, you know, plan elements, and among those was this kind of watercolor background, which I really liked. And then these elements are just Archicad silhouettes.
And so wait a second. Select that again. That was an object?
It's an object and it's grouped. So I have a forest. This is built into my template. Anytime I put a design together, this view is automatically generated because I just leave these elements in the template.
Okay, but when you select one of them, so what are they objects then from the standard library?
Standard library, yeah, they're found in the.
It's pine trees 25, and you're just using one of the 2D representations, and you're choosing it as a symbolic side view. So basically, this is intended as just a pure symbol from the side, which would be an elevation, as opposed to one that you might place on the plan, which would have, you know, a top-down view. So,
right.
And then you're choosing what different shades of gray are in there. So just carefully layered, and you have this whole forest that you've worked out, and you put that behind the building and then adjust as needed.
Right, exactly.
Awesome, awesome. So it's nice when you think about a template, and I just want to say this to everybody out there, when you think about a template, if there's something that you like as a graphic effect or any type of setup that takes a little while to do, save it in your template so that in your next project, when you have your elevations, you can easily, you know, they're already there, or you have it in something that you can copy and paste and just drop in, you know, without a big fuss. And those are all.
I do a lot. yeah, and so this is my stock layout, but depending on the design, it may be helpful to either slide this whole thing around, or even suspend the groups, and I can mirror this and change the orientation really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. There's one person commented that they love the font. So what is that font that you're using?
I use a bunch of different fonts. This one in particular is called Draft Hand. So it's an architectural handwritten font, and it's particularly sketchy. So I use this in the early stages. I use a handwritten for my construction documents as well. It's a little more refined, and that one's called Scribble. Those are the two that I primarily use.
Okay.
And then we have a 3D this as well, which I think is pretty compelling. And if you're working in 3D, I always recommend people pick up this 3D mouse from 3D Connection. It just gives you so much more control over exploring the model.
Now you had a poll, or you have some polls out there. Are they actual like telephone poles, or are they a mark for something that you use in Twinmotion?
I've done that. These are actual utility poles, but occasionally the Archicad's got trees, but they're not great trees, and Twinmotion has superior trees. But when you translate Archicad into Twinmotion, it automatically selects trees, so you get a very warm tree selection. So I found it's useful if I want control over. I'll put placeholders in, either a little miniature tree or a marker like a post. That then I have reference in Twinmotion. I can place a tree in Twinmotion over the top of this post, and now I'm replicating in the propagation a better tree that looks better in that location.
Now, by the way, you mentioned the 3D Connection mouse. So there was just a question from a couple of people. What was it? So this is, you want to pull it up in your camera. I don't know if your connection allows you to do that. So it's a special type of input device. It's a variation of a mouse, but it's more elaborate.
This is what they call the Prize 3D mouse, and there's a little 6-direction controller here. So you can twist it, lift it. The screen kind of shows how that works. And they also have a travel battery operated one, which I have that one too, and I put that in my briefcase and take that to design meetings. So I can, in anybody's house, we can do that 3D exploration pretty.
So 3D Connection, is it connection spelled the normal way, or does it have like an X or something in it?
Has an X in it, so it's 3D, the letter E, and then CONNEXTION, I think.
Something like that. Okay. And does the 3D Connection mouse work in Twinmotion as well?
Not yet, but they're working on it.
Okay.
But it's pretty powerful and useful. So I use they call their space mouse, and then I also have their CAD mouse, which is a multi-button scrolling mouse. I really like products. They're really solid, and they give you a lot of good control.
So Caroline asks, is the mouse only used when in Archicad 3D view, or you use it when you're in plan or when you're drafting, or designing?
So the 3D space mouse, I almost use exclusively in 3D. It does operate in the 2D space. It's just not very easy. So you basically have panning ability. There's some shortcut. There's about 20 different activity buttons that you can program for specific views or to do certain things. So my mouse, just a regular mouse, one of those buttons has what they call this radial menu, and I use this button constantly. This is the measure button. So you hit the M key, but I'm doing this so frequently. I built it into the mouse so I can take distance measurements quickly.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm glad we're getting some good interaction. Please feel free to type in more questions. I'm just going to check the Slack workspace. See. Okay. Nobody's actually typing in there, but if you're in the Archicad training courses, then you have access to Slack as well. All right. So carry on.
All right, so once we've finished the presentation, the client loves it, signs off, then it's time to get into construction documents. And so we move into this next entry here. We'll just kind of march through these really quickly to see what's here.
So the font, again, someone was asking, is it draft hand?
Draft hand, yes. And then, which is part of what they call the architectural font pack, which has got about 8 fairly attractive fonts.
So architectural font pack?
Yeah, architectural font pack, you'll get, it's like, there's Mr. Hand. No, I won't list them all, but they've got about 8 different architectural style fonts. And one of the ones that I don't know, I love it. It's just, I think it's so fun. It's this kind of sketchy outline. This is called FFF Truge. And it's a pretty grungy font, and Archicad doesn't like it that much because it doesn't work with all of the exports, but I don't know, I'm kind of a sucker for it, so I work around it. So these are typical specifications. I produce an architectural site plan, and then the civil engineering, those also get placed in here. And then we go into the architectural. So I've got your typical architectural layout. I've got a steel base plate diagram, fireplace section. And I'm kind of a stickler for my sheets, my drawings to align on sheets. So once I kind of get everything fit and everything looks good, I will use the trace reference to coordinate between layouts. So I just select other sheet, and it activated as a trace reference. And right, it's stacked right on top of it. But you'll see, oftentimes you'll have this kind of mismatch. So here's our reference position, and I use the north arrow on every sheet just to make sure on every layout they're precisely aligned, and it just, to me, it looks better when you have that uniformity between layouts. So the second floor, we have an attic mechanical room. So there's pull down stairs. And then this is a flat roof, and we're seeing some skylights and a light tunnel that feeds sunlight into the second floor. And then a typical roof plan. And the builder, it was funny, this project was kind of interesting because supply chain issues are so crazy. The builder wanted to know the windows very early on. And so we kind of made those decisions before we had everything done, and I produced a window schedule as part of the presentation package, both window schedule, which I don't usually do this, but we were able to get to a point so he could order windows while we develop the plans. And then later on, I was the thing that brought that up, he also wanted to get a confirmation of the roof area. He was getting some early quotes, and so this is a schedule pulled right out of the model. So asphalt is our little flat roof. Trim metal zinc are the window pans, and then You got a lot of regular asphalt shingle, 4,200 square feet of that, and then there's some standing seam roofs, and it pulled those figures out as well. And I'm a big fan of the roof surfacer. I think it adds a lot of dimension. So these little standing seam ribs are a design add-on.
So I'm going to just clarify something from a technical perspective. So when you, if you want to get a standing seam effect like that, what Mark is doing is selecting one or more roofs and using the design menu roof extras. Yeah, just we want to demonstrate that off to the side.
It's an underlying roof, which has no detail to it. It does have the surface overridden to a thing called standing seam, and that's what's being reported through the sketch. But you can also then, for the drawings, you select this roof and then access the design menu, and kind of blinded by my light here.
Roof extras just a little higher.
There you go. Accessories, roof accessories. And it gives you two choices. This is a ceiling choice and this is a roof choice. And within this, you can also select a number of, you can do corrugated, trapezoid, normal, Italian tiles. I just did one with Italian tiles a while back. But you just fill in the parameters, some spacing, leave all the defaults here and see what we get. It's going to place it in the roof accessories layer. When you click OK, it just applies that surfacer to that roof. And it's art surface, and that if you make changes, the surfacer adjusts with the roof. We can do a fancy change, put a little arc on this. Yeah.
So by the way, that the roof or the design menu, the extras, the accessories, where Mark was pulling that down, that isn't installed automatically when you install Archicad. You have to go and get it as an additional download. It's no charge from Graphisoft. So if you go to the help menu, just where, I just want to point out where you can get this. If you go to the help menu in Archicad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called the accessories library. But if you go to the help menu, go to online resources.
Arca Plus downloads, it might be there, or
Arca Plus, there we go. Arca Plus downloads.
I guess that's member only content. And I thought would be a goodie, so it would be under the main one. I don't think you have to be on Arca Plus. For those of you around the world, Arca Plus is the US version of a maintenance contract. So I'm sure large majority of people are these days are on, a subscription of a maintenance project, maintenance contract. So it's not actually in here. This is a great place to know about in terms of if you are on subscription, you can get access to some additional useful tools. But right. It would be under Archicad downloads. So if you go back to the Archicad app, and or you can go to, I guess, under support, maybe it's downloads there, and Archicad add-ons, and there's goodies. So the goodies, and then you pick your, US or whatever country, and then it includes, you can see in the list in the left side near the bottom, it says accessories is the one that Mark is using for the roof surfacer. And accessories basically takes certain elements like roofs, walls, or slabs, and gives you options for creating something related to that shape. So as you saw, the roof piece had a complex outline, and it was only putting in the standing seam within that shape. And if you modify the size of the roof or its inclination, then this accessory will update. Powerful, although has some limitations. The same technology is available through a paid add-on from CAD Image to do some more sophisticated surface cladding on walls and roofs and slabs. So anyway, just wanted to make sure that all of you at least knew where this was coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So Stuart Blake, by the way, says the 3D Connection Space Navigator does work in twin motion with limited capacity. It's the Space Mouse is the joystick type of unit, and CAD Mouse is a mouse with extra buttons. Okay, thank you for that, Stuart. And Joe Archibald asked, do you have a link to the draft fonts? I guess not finding it in a Google search using that name. I'm going to see if I can find it. I remember the guy who made that. He's a Southern California architect, and he's an Archicad user, although he sells the fonts, for general use. And used to be a client way back in the day. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, Architectural Font Pack. Architect Font Pack.
Yeah, so the one I use is called the Architectural Font Pack. And these are those. So my logo is actually Glasgow.
Okay, so I found a link here. It's being sold through a website called archblocks.com, and I'm going to post that in here. So if you go to archblocks.com, and then it says your one-stop CAD shop, and then it does have fonts, obviously, as one of the things. And it has Mr. Hand, Heavy Hand, Glasgow, Scribble, Sketcher, and Stamped. And so it's being sold through them. It may be sold through other places as well, but it's definitely on there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have draft hand, so your draft hand must come from somewhere else.
I had to get that someplace else, and I can't remember where it came from.
Mm-hmm. So does roof surfacer show up in the section or detail? Yes, it's a 3D element or elements, plural, that will show up in your model and in, elevations as well.
Yeah.
Or end sections, yeah. It's a 3D element.
Yeah, so
are there more accessory uses other than roofs? You can put, there are accessories for walls to put paneling on the walls and to do framing, although the wall framing is somewhat limited.
Yeah.
And so, I see. So Eric Lutz has put in a note for where to get the draft hand. I'm just going to reply to it so that everybody should see that. Let's bring this up here. So, okay, always good to share. This particular on MirageStudio7.com it has 23 architectural fonts similar to Architect's handwriting, so it has a lot more choices, and it does have the draft hand. It doesn't have some of the ones that you were using that are commercial ones like Mr. Hand, etc. But they have certainly a wide variety of ones there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then.
This is kind of interesting too. My client picked out a very particular bracket, and and he gave me the model number and the website where it came from, and I was able to contact them, and they sent me a SketchUp of this bracket. We'll see. But that was a simple drag and drop. I got their SK file, it into the view, it imported it as a Archicad object, and we have this nice detail that I didn't have to come up with.
Yeah, so Archicad is capable of importing objects, 3D elements from a variety of sources. One of the nice ones is SketchUp. You have to have a version of the file in a SketchUp up to a certain level, like it probably SketchUp 2021 or 2022 isn't supported necessarily yet. But you know, if you have SketchUp 2019 or something like that, then and they usually will supply, if they have it at all, they'll supply it in a variety of SketchUp formats. And then you literally just download the file, have it on your computer, and then drag it into the Archicad plan window, you know, a floor plan, and it will actually import it, turn it into an object within the Archicad embedded library, and it'll be visible. Then you'll be able to make copies of it, move it around in space, of course, if it's a 3D element, etc.
And then this is the client selected a Clopay overhead door, and Archicad didn't have anything that even came close to looking like that. So this is a custom door leaf, which is activated through this. So you'll select the custom door leaf option, and then that activates this window, and I've created custom pieces here. And to do those, let's look at the first floor plan. So I just kind of create those here, and there's a layer in the Archicad master template called Object Construction. And so I use that for all of my layout lines. If I do field measures, I'll place all of those lines on Object Construction layer. But I also use this to create these custom door panels. So these are the panels, these are the stiles and rails, and then we've got some glass and some mullions. And so if I select that and bring that up, that's our door.
So technical note, this is done by creating a model, as you can see here, lying on the ground, and actually technically it should be at the 0 level of your project, project 0. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, everything above 0 is inside the wall. Everything below 0 would be considered outside, like a doorknob might be, put in on the outside. Right. And then if you select all of that right now, and then go with it selected, go to the File menu, Libraries and Objects, you can see that there's an option to save selection as, and you say, in this case, a door leaf. So not a door itself, but a leaf that could be put into a standard door is what we would give you the effect that Mark is doing.
Right. So that's a pretty dirty way to do that. This is our double door. This is our single door. And then similarly for the front door, this was a commercial door that he picked out. So this is the door and the side light. And so those were both saved as door leaves.
Mm-hmm. Take a look at a section, some of your sections, just see how far you take the modeling.
Yeah, I take the modeling pretty far. This one, that's probably the thing that needs the most attention in this model, but I can show you what we've got. So in our sections layer, so, and I do some sections are so useful for when you're modeling. I create these sections, and since I work with a team, and I don't want anyone to delete my test sections, I just add them with my initials. So everyone on the team will create their own sections, and those are placed on the special object construction layer. So they don't show up in the floor plan, but they're there for reference. So I'll take a look at one of these. So this is a section which passes through the stair, through that light well. These are where the lights will feed light down. It's going to really flood the whole interior of the house with really nice natural light. I do model with the Archicad 3D light parts. So these are recessed cans, which are kind of floating below the ceiling so we can see them, but when you see them from inside, they kind of blend in and look like they're on the ceiling. Model all the kitchens. We've got a beam that's a little too high. And I just did a, I just realized last week that my basement was 16 inches too deep. And so I changed the story settings to correct that, but some of my elements didn't get updated yet. So drop those beams down. Model, this is the front porch. So we have a garage or a flat concrete slab, and I extend the top of the concrete up. We're probably going to, in order to make this a more sturdy section, I'm going to drop the top of this concrete down so I can allow the framing to come across and tie the wall and everything together. But for now, we're just kind of showing it as a notch in the concrete to allow framing and have concrete butt up against it. Showing the concrete steps of the station. And not much to see here. We've been playing around with the ceiling heights a bit, so some of our parts haven't quite been tuned up. This belt band is a complex profile. A lot of complex profiles, very simple. I also use the element ID for all of my, so when I place my windows, I number them all sequentially to a uniform type. Every window has a unique number. And then I also use that in the elevations. Automatic label. So this label is linked to this window. So this window is number W217. If I were to change this number to 19 for whatever reason, it updates this label. It also updates the schedule. So everything's hot linked, so I can quickly make changes that flow throughout.
Can you select the label itself? And just to show the settings of that.
Mm-hmm. So this is an object indicator, which just places it inside of this form.
But you open it up because you have the symbol setting. So this is a particular object that's included in master template. There are other ways to do very similar things. I think I created this because people asked for this particular diamond end shape. And so I created a unique frame. But the object ID, you can see where it says object ID. And then if you press down on that, you can put in a custom if you needed to, but otherwise it's going to pick up the ID that's related to the element that it's associated with. And this is a label. And so like all labels, it can be associated with an element. In this case, it's associated with the window. And therefore, it's picking up information from the window, displaying it, in this case, with the little diamond ends.
Right. I like that part. I should show you my my custom library part as well, which I use everywhere. I was spending so much time constructing a joist symbol to indicate joist direction and type, I decided to make a library part out of it. So this part is this. And then it has a drop-down selection for all different kinds of frame types. And then where it's being applied, joist, ceiling, joist, rafter, whatever it may be, the spacing. And then it's there's kind of a dotted line to help orient it. It's a very stretchy part. You can change its size, its orientation, where the text gets placed.
So you did your own GDL programming for this?
I did.
Great. So is it something that you've ever given or considered sharing with others?
I have shared it with others.
Is it something that you commercial aspirations do, or that you'd be happy to share with through Archicad user to, I could post it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share it.
Not to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to, I can help share it.
Yeah, there's a, I don't know if this function is still happening here. I was working on a, I may have disabled it. I was hoping, because we work with a lot of interns, and at one point, so I just changed this to a 2x8. I don't think the feature is working. But I had it set up so it knew tables. And so if this was too long for a 2x8, it would put a warning box across this and say overspan, which you could disable if you were so bold to do that. But, so I've disabled that because it was too cumbersome. But yeah, I'm happy to share that. I think that's a useful tool.
Great. Well, I'd be happy to post that and give you, of course, credit and a thank you.
Of course, I appreciate that. So that's kind of the end of that part of it.
Okay, there are a couple of questions before we move on. David Iguchi says, for your custom garage door, do you ask the contractor for shop drawings?
So it's custom to Archicad. This is an off-the-shelf product through Clopay, so that he gave me the model number and the specs on it, and I just fabricated or matched it.
Okay, so you took their drawings and then just created a model of the garage door that was as close as you needed to represent it.
Yeah,
right.
And I gave thought to contacting Clopay to see if they would share their drawings. It was so fast to do, and it's close enough to give the image. I didn't want
now,
to
if manufacturers provide something in a Revit format or Sketchup format, we can import those and then turn them into objects, or in this case, a door panel. So it is something that you, of course, in many cases, they will provide it in some format digitally that you can import. Now, there's a question from Eric Reinhardt. Eric, when you build your own part as with the doors that Mark made, can you add basic parametric controls, or are all aspects of the item fixed? So when you're doing a door panel, like that garage door or the interior, the other conventional door sizes and side lights, it is a fixed size. Now, if you say that you made something that was 2'6" and then you want to put a version of it for 3 feet, Archicad will stretch it to fit 3 feet. So you won't have this weird gap. But of course, the width of the stiles or other details will deform as you do that. So typically what I do, and I'm sure Mark, you do this as well, is if there are different sizes, let's say you had a single garage door and a double garage door or something like that, and of course the frame around it shouldn't get half as wide when you make it halfway, you would create 2 models. You basically drag a copy of the chunk that you modeled and make a variation to the right size. So now you have 2 or possibly multiple versions correct for each size that you need. So it's not parametric, but of course you can select these things, drag them over, remove some stuff, add some stuff, and then it'll be a good model for that size. But for small differences, where it's just a little bit, 5 or 10% bigger or smaller, you may find just putting it in at a different size, it looks fine, and no one's going to measure, you know, that that this style or this element is, you know, half an inch too wide, because visually it looks fine.
Right.
But it's not parametric.
It's not technical parametric, but it will, like you said, stretch. And one of the other tricks, as much as we don't want to admit that this segmented door line is here, I think it's useful to communicate that. So there's actually a 16th inch gap between the center line break. So there's an 1/8 inch gap, so that when you look at that elevation, you see.
You see the line separating it as opposed to it blending in, because Archicad does a good job, as we all know, when you stack or put elements side by side that have the same surface, that are painted the same essentially. It will remove the line, and sometimes you do want to see that line, so you have to create an arbitrary gap to set. Archicad says, oh, these aren't actually connected, therefore I will put an end line where one ends and where another one starts. So okay.
So this is an example of a typical house for me. I mentioned in the intro that I also work with a affordable housing component, a group called Solid Rock Carpenters. Let me just start, open up the file here, and then I can kind of show an intro to that. I'm going to save this because it did stuff. I'm just going to open up this other project, and then we'll bounce back to. I'm a board member for Solid Rock Carpenters, and we partner with others like Home, another group called Appalachian Service Project, as well as Habitat for Humanity. And we provide products unskilled labor can reliably produce quality homes. And so this is Hope Village, which is Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, and they suffered a 1,000-year flood back in June of 2016, and it just wiped out the town. There's dramatic footage of structures floating down the river on fire, hitting bridges. It's apocalyptic. So they lost a lot of their and houses that were most vulnerable are those that were wiped out by the flood. So we work with Appalachian Service Project. They partnered with Home Depot Foundation, and Home Depot Foundation does 9 fundraising events every year, and they usually do a service project. It's oftentimes painting or fixing or, you know, making things better, existing things better. But we gave them the opportunity to actually build new homes. So our group prepared the components to be assembled in a field, like you see here, for 12 homes. And we assembled all 12 homes, swept the field for nails, and loaded the components onto trucks in under 2 hours with unskilled labor. So this is a little bit of a description of that. It shows a bit of our process. The thing that we bring to this process is very laborious to create these plates for build walls. And so I create these printed actual ice with the out and the tie back, and then the group will staple them down. There's a top bottom and it makes it super understaffed. So group assembled in the field, big tour bus going to drop about 200 Home Depot materials, frame the wall, and we pick those onto a truck. And the interesting, these were supposed to go in, but they were funding, and at the minute, HUD schools, they attach the version that the defense pays, or project, which is something like 2%. And it, you know, this is a nonprofit organization, but they still operate under the same kind of margins that a contractor would. So they needed something much closer to 20%, and it really just killed it there. So we switched gears. We were trying to build these in West Virginia. but we were able to reroute them. They went to Tennessee, and they're now being built in Tennessee. So we're working on today, we started last week, and Saturday doesn't ran us out. We're building the 2 of 300 homes in North Chicago. Again, Rock Carpenters is part of Matthews Homes. I took out of drawings from my former employer who's involved in the project, and we did this layout that makes the whole process digestible and understandable for the good-hearted but not necessarily skilled. So we use a color coding strategy for the studs. It's like, kind of like paint by numbers. I anticipate that this Saturday we'll have both homes framed with the trusses, the roof sheathing on, and the windows and doors in. So it'll be secured, built and secured in one day. So let's take that project. So this is that house, and we're really leveraging Archicad's power here by it's doing a takeoff of this design. So we started with the traditional structural plan, just like we would do for house. But then I took the next step and created this framing plan. So there is a complex profile which creates a top and bottom plate, a double top plate and a single bottom plate, which looks like this. And this is again that Archicad trick. So we backed off. This is 2 2x6s, and we shortened them both by 1/16 of an inch. So we create this line. The bottom plate is just regular single bottom plate. And then these are individual studs. That's a pre-cut stud. And then it uses the element ID of X for a stud. And then we have all sorts of other components, like we have these jack studs. Oops, that's the whole thing. And we decided we're going to color code those green. And then we have these crippler studs, which are for the windowsill, and those were blue. So when we got done, we have a wall that looks something like that. And so we will paint the ends of the stud so the volunteers can go to the pile and they know they need to pick up 20 red studs and 10 green studs and 12 blue studs. They bring those over and then they frame them up. And this is how that comes together. So we have a cover sheet, which just shows a 3D version of the framing plan. And then we have this, this is our color coding assembly. And then we have kind of the typical components that go into this. We have some single studs, cripplers, jacks, L's, U's. We just gave them a bit of a primer on how those go. Then, COVID and supply chain issues have made building houses pretty expensive. So we want to make the most out of our projects. So we have a schedule for every one of the walls in order of length. And so our cut team can just use this list, and they know they need to cut total length of 546 inches, and it's a single bottom plate and a double top plate, so a total of 3 plates. And this is actually a production list, so when the saw guy is done, he initials it and marks it as being done. And then we have this diagram that really shows how to break that up most efficiently. So here's our longest wall, it's right wall 03. So this is the third. I should back up a little bit. We also about this in terms of sequencing. So exterior walls are all 2x6. Frame those on the deck because we don't want to move them. So they're going to get up on the deck. All of the interior walls won't have plywood. They're small, easier to manage. We're closing the street, and we have a street shop. So the volunteers are going to build all of the interior walls in the street. And we've numbered these sequentially. So it starts with the front wall, which is front wall 1. That's going to go up first. And then we do the back wall. So those are the 2 gable ends. And then we're going to the wall all at once. So that's right wall 03. And then the front of this side, which faces the street, is broken into 3 pieces. And we're going to build this one last because we're going to use these walls to stabilize the gables. And we're going to leave this gap so the street work can get loaded into the house. And we started with the walls in the back. So this is 6. And then the last walls are 35, 36, 37. So we have a sequencing that it all comes into the right order, gets placed in the right location. So we looked at the plates. We also we also manage the headers. This was kind of a quick timeline to get deeply into this, but we show an example of how the headers are constructed, and we have a schedule that shows how many or what length they need to be and the quantity. Similarly, we have this is Archicad calculating the heights of all the different studs. And so we know we need 62 of these little blocks, which are the headers for the interior doors. And then these are sills. Then we have jacks, and then finally pre-cuts. And so we have an accurate takeoff of every stud that goes into the house. And
so Mark, these are done with objects or with the column tool or beam tool or what?
These are the column tool.
So you're placing columns with designations, and you're then multiplying them every 16 inches or whatever, and doubling them, and then how is the color coding happening? Is that based on you select a color, or that you give it a designation number that then automatically gets a color? What is it?
We select the colors manually. So we assign these studs these colors.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we print the labels, I just have a big block of all these colors, so we can color match with paint. You go to Home Depot and match. They get whatever, it's 10 colors that we're getting, and they use that to roll or spray onto the stacks of studs.
And so they're actually painted onto the stud as opposed to putting a paper label or something.
Right, the studs are painted. The plates have the labels. And interesting, one of the board members pointed out to me that he's colorblind. So, and 1 in 12 men are. So in our event at White Sulphur Springs, 200 people, we had a significant number of those couldn't read our system because it was color-based. But we also want to do a uniform spacing. So we're using that object construction layer again. We have a layout every 16 inches plus a 24 center for the distance. So we know where they're going to land. This one lands in between 2 studs. This one lands on it, and that's how we want it. So that helps us keep a uniform stud layout the whole project. Even on the interior walls, those are going to line up with the trusses as well.
Okay, so these are all the walls. Are you doing floor framing, roof framing? How is that handled?
We're arriving with the decks already built, though we're probably going to add that to the system. Wall framing is what we're doing, and then this is a layout for the exterior sheathing, so that we can tie the walls to the deck. And this is kind of a goofy thing. I wanted them to get 9-foot plywood sheets, but they got 8 foot, so we had to come up with this is the way they wanted to do that. So it is what it is. So then one of the products we produce is this 11 by 17 sheet, which shows an individual wall, and it has a component inventory. So when the volunteers pick up this sheet, they know they need to get 18 2x6 studs, 14 cripples, 16 jacks, so on and so forth. And there's when this prints, these are the colors. These studs are the colors that they're looking for. And then I borrowed this from Master Template as well. We've got this sample plan, this registration plan, and we just place a little marker here that indicates this wall goes here. So a lot of this is on the background of the master template, the master layout, and then we just use that as background.
So
And then,
if you were to just temporarily switch your background from gray to normal color, then we could see the end result under the view menu. On-screen view options. And then, well, master items we are showing there. Oh, I guess it's actually under option work environment. So options menu. Oh, you got it it's under Archicad menu now. Okay, as well. Work environment. And then there would be, what is it? On-screen options, I think. And you don't use uniform color for master items on layouts, so that you uncheck that at least temporarily. And then we're going to see on the layout the master items being in their natural color. So anyway, that's a little trick there. It's nice to be able to ignore or have in the background the master items, but sometimes you want to be able to see how this is going to print out.
Yeah, so everyone gets a this sheet is distributed framing day. They can see exactly how the wall is supposed to go together, and this is kind of a fail-safe. If our label printer doesn't come through, a carpenter, somebody with some construction skills, can use this. We have a running dimension, so they can do the layout if they needed to live in the field. This also has automatic labels built in. So if we look at the source view of this, you know, this label is a element ID. So this label is actually this plate, which comes from the model. So this is an interior elevation to create this view, and then we convert this into this is two-dimensional drawing of the actual plate layout, and we just use this to register. So this shows up automatically, and then these are objects that we align the model.
Okay, so there have been a bunch of comments, Mark, saying how impressive this is and thanking you for volunteering. Obviously, you're helping this project. Is it pro bono?
It is. On this project, I've got a consultant, a production guy, Archicad guy in Detroit, and I'm paying him for his time, but mine is donated.
Right. And question, how much time have you put into developing the system? I'm now it's clear you've got a system and you could do additional designs quicker because everything's worked out, but it seems like you really took the time to troubleshoot and say, well, we need to have this data here, this type of, you know, simple sheet. Let's just take this sheet over here and, you know what we're building.
Right.
Do you have any idea how much time you've put in developing the system?
I know the first time we did this, which was for White Sulphur Springs, I had easily a week full-time work. My guy in Michigan, I think he spent 10 hours essentially modifying that original design to this new design. So all the components were here, this whole layout was done. He just had to fit it to the new design. So I think it was about 10 hours work to do this. But we're going to see the benefits on 300 homes, so it's time well.
Highly leveraged work, yes.
Yes.
Great.
So these are the instructions. Oh, that's not it. There we go. So we have one of these sheets for every wall, and then the way we get to the actual size banners, the labels that we staple to the plates, these are pulled from that same model view, but this is a 30-foot long by 3-foot sheet of paper. This is a 30 piece of Tyvek. And this is actual size. After doing this several years, we realized we had no identification of what model we were working on. So we had templates for several different model homes, and none of them were labeled for which one they belonged to. So now we have this naming convention. We know what this plate belongs to. It's Matthew Homes, the Grove Twins, Solid Rock Carpenters, and this is the date it was produced.
All right. So this is done to scale, and it's on a durable medium so that it can be reused for the multiple homes.
Well, it's disposable. But it's durable, so it doesn't come apart in the rain. So Tyvek, it's a permanent part of the wall now. We just print as many as we need. So it costs us about $200 from our printer to get a full house. And they print this 36-inch by 30-foot long piece, and then they trim. So we get a roll that's just this piece. And what we're looking at here is a bottom plate. So this is a 5.5-inch plate, and then it wraps around on the inside face, so you can still read the markings once the wall's assembled. And then this is the top plate, which gives us an indication of where headers belong. We do a second wall, which is a little mini wall, which is the windowsill. So another team can build this off to the side, and then we just drop it into the wall. To help as they're assembling, we put a that just points to the front of the house. And since this is the bottom plate, is one direction, the top plate you see from underneath, it's reverse. And so it points the opposite direction, but when you frame it, they both end up facing the same direction.
That's why they call it a reflected ceiling plan.
Precisely why this is so confusing in the field. We have to really hold everybody's hand to make that happen. And then once we get to the interior walls, we're able to put a bunch of walls on the same sheet. So this has multiple walls on one 3-foot wide piece of Tyvek, and they trim these out into individual strips. And this is our color coding. So we're looking at these are interior doors. So that's kind of that's the system.
That's your erector set instructions.
It is indeed.
I remember erector sets. I wonder if they still make those.
I think they do.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Yeah, a bunch of more comments. One thing, wanting to go back to your custom home about looking at detail sheets. So what, do you have any details on that model? It looks like it's early on, so maybe you don't have much set up.
We have, this is kind of a, I don't want to say quick and dirty, but it's quick and dirty. So we have a foundation detail and an eave detail. Most of what they're going to handle, other than that, is going to be done in the field. This is more or less a builder set.
Okay. Are you? So I guess you're sending in changes here.
I just canceled just switching to the other one.
So you're using. You mentioned that you have a remote team for certain projects, and you mentioned the guy in Detroit. So are you using your own BIM server, or are you using Graphisoft's rental, BIM server in the cloud?
We're using Graphisoft's BIM cloud,
right? Okay.
Which we get. It's $400 per year, $400 per user per year, which is pretty good. I tried to beat that with my own server, and you can't do it. So it's a pretty good.
It's not worth doing it. You can do it, but it's not worth it for most. Most of us mortals, would benefit from just paying for the SaaS, paying for the service, software as a service.
Right.
And yeah, I was actually going to set up a whole BIM server in the cloud thing a few years ago, and then Graphisoft basically told me, you know what, that license does not allow that. You can do it for your own stuff, but you can't do it commercially. And I went, oh, okay. They're going to monetize this. They're going to, sell it directly. It was fine.
Right.
I didn't get distracted with trying to run yet another business. But I think they offer it at a reasonable price. So yeah, so now we're back in your what do you call it, custom home. So we've got a couple of details here on the side. So let's just zoom in on one of them, or open the source view. Yeah.
So
how
this is,
how much of this is modeled versus 2D?
this is all 2D. And this is another one of the products that I've made. I've got a master detail sheet that shows every instance of this kind of condition. So I have multiple roof pitches. I've got different wall thicknesses, different exteriors. So I've got this kind of matrix, so I can just copy and paste an entire detail from that file to here, and then just modify it as needed.
So do you have a trace and reference where we can see how this fits into the model?
Not yet. Yeah, this is a 2D drawing. I would typically let's see. I use the better detail mode, which I'll just link to whatever custom design or custom detail I've got. Where did I stash that? It's on, huh? It may have gotten deleted, so I don't see it here. So I use the detail tool, and
So you have something called Better Detail Marker. Where does that come from?
I thought I got it from you.
I'm not familiar with that. So somebody else is getting, well, should get credit for it anyway.
Well, I should get credit for now. You're getting it.
Okay.
And this just had some of the features that I liked in a detail marker, including mostly that you can have this thick line. So you can this handle representation. I like the thick. Really, the primary reason I like it. It does that appearance. But once you have that selected, then you can select detail. So this is an eave. So now that's linked, and in BIM or BIMX, you would see this in the model, and you could bring up that detail and see it that way.
Okay. Now, do you have a section that would match to, like, I do see a section right below there. If you were to open that section, would it be relatively close to what we're seeing?
Boy, I've got my fingers crossed. Well,
You probably have to change layers. Well, maybe not. Okay. All right.
not exactly the same because we have a vaulted ceiling in there, but this is essentially. So let's roll the dice and see what we get. And this is one where I changed the pitch, but that is the detail.
And if you were to switch the other way, swap the detail with the active view.
Reference on top, or
just switch reference with active. Near the top.
got it.
So now we're looking at the detail and we're seeing the context. So this is typically just as a side note for process. If you do want to use pre-made details and then of course coordinate context, then you'd want to say have the detail be the editable part, because you're going to be changing the 2D line work to match the model, and then basically what Mark did was drag it into relationship. So you have some known point, corner of the wall, corner of the roof, whatever that you're trying to match up. And then you'll modify the 2D to match the context. Or perhaps realize that your model is not doing what you need and that you need to modify the model, one or the other. Okay, right. So we can see, obviously some things that are not coordinated, and as you said, roll the dice. So, let's see how close it is. But this is what ultimately what you need to have is a good coordination. So
right. So I just opened up my matrix of details to kind of give a sense for how that works. So I think that's pretty powerful as well. Just a moment here, we'll open up.
So, by the way, Tracy D'Alessio asked, you just load Tyvek into your printer? I know it seems obvious, but.
Yes. Now, we used a commercial printer that has inks made for outdoor use, so they don't run in the rain. But yeah, you could buy an 8.5 by 11 sheet of Tyvek and print onto that, and you'd have essentially the same concept.
But you have it as a roll.
As a roll. And I learned, so when we were shipping walls, we kept everything to about a 12-foot dimension, which was no big deal. This one, we have a 46-foot long of Tyvek, and Acrobat has a practical limit of 16 feet. So the printer had to take 3 pieces. When I output from Archicad, it printed in 3 16-foot long sections, and the printer was able to assemble those to print all at once. So this is my my template cheat sheet. It's got a bunch of, so we've got some base molding, I've got some typical stucco details, profiles, crown, and I used a catalog to kind of create those. And this is one that we use as a standard, so it was highlighted. But then we also have, so to build our details, I've got so here's foundation details for an 8-inch concrete wall. So here's a standard detail, pretty plain. And then we have a version of that which is insulated. We have another version of that which is waterproofed. We have insulated and waterproofed. We have reinforced.
Now, by the way, are these all on a plan and just different layers? Or different, you have them carefully aligned in terms of views, but it's they're arrayed. Okay.
Yeah. So these are all the 8-inch foundations. These are all the 10-inch foundations. And so the practice is to get to the detail that you want. You just drag select everything here, copy, paste, and go back to your home project and place it into one of the detail spots. And then this pairs with a first floor framing. So you could pick any of these. There's a stucco, siding, masonry, with a knee wall, no knee wall. And so this gets copied and pasted, and it really just stacks right on top of. So we could mimic that here. So if I had a standard foundation, copy it, and then go back to my project, and I'll just paste it over here. Maybe I didn't copy it. Copy, paste. So this is in the other project, and then we would pick a masonry with a knee wall. Go to that view, select this, copy that, and then go back to our foundation. Paste that view.
Yeah, the marquee was in the bottom left area.
Oh, did I miss? It's behind my light. I don't see it. Where is?
It's in the bottom row, second from the left.
Ah, there we go. Thank you. So then this, pick up this hot spot here. Oops. So now, with very little effort, we've got a full foundation detail.
Brilliant.
And we can do a little bit of housekeeping, line these up. And then similarly, we have the eave details. And let's do masonry with a 12-inch overhang, 2x6 wall, a 6/12 pitch. So now we have effectively a wall section. Oops, no. Relatively painless.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's clear that by having a good system for organizing the different variations, you can just save a lot of time in terms of the 2D work. The main thing that you have to be careful, and obviously, you know, I asked you to show something before, you know, you had even a chance to look at it. You have to make sure that your detail suits the context, or vice versa, that your design matches the detail. You know, oh, I forgot to put this in. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And this whole system came about because I was basically managing 18 architects who all had different ideas on how a detail should look. So this went through a bit of a committee process, but we got a majority agreement on how we wanted the details to look, and now this is how we do it. So it made everything much more uniform and attractive. So.
Awesome, awesome. Let's see if there's any other comments or questions. So, okay, so Mamadi says, how much will it cost to upgrade template Archicad 20 to 25? So standard price for an upgrade $147. When we have a new version, like when Archicad 26 comes out, then I do an intro price like 97. So I don't know when Archicad 26 is coming out. I guess I'm guessing it'll come out within the next 3 to 6 months. But if you want to do an upgrade sooner, then you can do it at the standard price. All right. So Caroline says, Mark, you are a detail master. So congratulations on
Thank you.
kudos there. And Tracy says, many thanks, wonderful work. All right. So let's see, anything else, Mark, that you think would be good to show? You haven't brought up twin motion today, other than to show in your video samples some of those things. Is there anything that you've learned or developed or changed in your approach to twin motion that could be either demonstrated or at least shared relatively quickly?
I think relatively quick. I was going to offer to go with it, but I don't think I even have 25 installed on this one. So I'm using twin motion much the same way I always have. I'm back and forth between Archicad and twin motion all the time. It's that fluid. So when I make a change in Archicad, when I activate the twin motion view, Archicad and twin motion handshake, and those changes are made from Archicad to twin motion, but not backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You can keep your model up to date, and any manipulation that you've done in twin does stick. New elements or changes to the materials. So it's a really good fluid workflow.
At what point do you first bring it into twin motion?
Sometimes at the beginning, but rarely. It's usually part of the wrapping up construction document phase. So I'm usually in a rush to get out for permit, but I'm at the same time I'm also thinking about marketing and getting a picture of the project out there. And it's also it's something that it's a value added for my client, especially developers doing a spec home. I'll usually do a sample rendering or animation to show them, and it almost always turns into a contract to do several minutes of animation to market the project,
Okay.
make a job site sign.
That would be interesting to see. So you have a contract to do design, get permit, etc., and you often leave this fancy visualization as an add-on that you entice them with once the design is to their liking. Now let's take a look at the virtual version of it, and then they go, wow, that's great. And now, so how much do you charge on top for the visualization part?
I quote it per the project. It's around $2,000 to get some level of animated presentation going. This project, the spec home that I showed earlier, that started as the developer wanted to have a big job site sign with a rendering of the project. So we started with a 3D rendering, and I think I charged her $1,000 to add the entourage and make an attractive looking image, and we ended up so I quoted to add the entourage to the model plus number of images, and I think that was a flat fee of maybe $2,500. And then every image after that, because we were already invested in the modeling, I think I was doing additional images for $500 a piece.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then on my own, since I've already got all the modeling done, shooting stills, for my own purposes, I shot an animation of several animations of the project. And now she's aware of those, and she's trying to figure out a way if she can use those in her own marketing, and we'll figure out what that's worth to her.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's great that you're able to do it as a profit center, as a way to leverage, obviously, the work and your expertise for yet another valuable service, those images. So you say sometimes you do take it in early, but more often people aren't relying on that as you go through the design process. You're doing it as an after.
For during design development, schematic design development, construction documents, I'm constantly communicating using BIMX. So I send them a link to BIMX, and that's just by far the head and shoulders the favorite for everyone. Um, I've got a project, a very small lake house project with an impossible budget, impossibly low budget, but they've been very engaged with the BIMX. They love BIMX, and their friends in Chicago are building a multi-million-dollar house in Chicago and lamenting that they don't get half of the things that their little lake cottage is getting. So it's a really powerful tool for them to use and communicate with.
So there's a question from Caroline saying, are you running on the M1 chip?
No, I opted for, I was buying a new laptop just as the M1s were out, but I wanted the larger screen, the screen, so I went with the legacy technology. But I understand the M1 is doing very well.
Yeah. All right, so I'm looking to see if we missed any other questions. All right. No, I don't see anything there. Let's just check in Slack here. No, I've been pretty quiet on that side. All right, so last chance for questions, and also, of course, for you, Mark, if there's anything else that you realize that you wanted to share, then I think that this could be a good stopping point. One thing I just want to point out for a little bit of, I'll call it self-promotion here. Mark, in addition to being an Archicad user and obviously using Master Template, so that's one thing that I'm connected to, and I can take at least some credit for his success. Mark is also a member of the Architect Marketing Institute Mastermind program. So Mark has been working on his marketing over the years, using some of the strategies that we teach over there. So for some of you know very well and are part of the Architect Marketing Institute programs, though some of you only know me from the Archicad side, I have a whole other business with a business partner named Richard Petrie that teaches architects about marketing and sales techniques. Mark has been part of that over the years, and I know as you've found that to be particularly helpful for certain parts of your business development. Can we just maybe talk for a couple of minutes about what difference having these marketing strategies makes in your business?
It's enormous. So first of all, as architects, very few of them out of school with any knowledge or understanding of the importance or value kind of think we're going to put a website up and the work with us. That's the hope. And on the flip side, that's kind of the advantage, that those who know that you need to market and advertise, they're in a class zone because all their compatriots are sitting there waiting for work. So the marketing lets you go out and get the work, pursue it. I look at it as, honestly, right now, I got all the work I can handle and more. So it's an odd time to get to be engaged in seeking more, but I'm a big believer in digging your well before you're thirsty. So I'm digging my well.
Right. Well, there's the other thing about it is that when we all recognize there are great projects and there are projects that are okay, and there are projects that you wish you hadn't taken on, perhaps because the profit is too low, the fees are too low, or the client is painful to work with, or it's just simply not something that gives you satisfaction because it's repetitive or it's not creative on some level. So when you have enough inquiries, when you're well known enough, as Mark has gotten to be, then you can pick and choose, and you can work with better projects and better clients. So that's the other side of it. Even if you don't want to work more, you can work on the things that give you the most satisfaction or profit. So I think that's enough of an advertisement. If you want more information, you can certainly email me through support@bobrow.com and I'll share that. Or you can just go to archmarketing.org. So ARCH marketing.org, archmarketing.org, and you'll see a lot of information. I stay in the background there. I'm co-founder and equal partner with Richard Petrie. I let him do all the teaching, or most of the teaching there, because I do all of the stuff with Archicad, and I'm happy to have him be the person who's creating most of the visible content. But I do I'm the managing partner. I keep the things running. So you know how it is with any firm that has more than one partner. One person may be out there getting the work, and the other person may be just making sure the production keeps going, and that's what I do. All right, so Mark, really appreciate your sharing your expertise here. Obviously, using Archicad very effectively, efficiently, taking advantage of a lot of the connections between things and data and schedules and reuse of information with the template and your detail library. Appreciate that you're sharing that one part. There may be some other things I come to you, Mark, saying, hey, can we arrange a way to share some more things? But just showing it and giving people a mental picture of like how you have your detail library in another file and how you can easily access just the right thing to bring in, I think was a real eye opener. So let's see if there's any other comments. So Doug Muir says, is Archicad native on M1 yet? I think Archicad 25 is, but I'm not 100% sure. And Caroline says, what is that marketing called again? I'll just put it into the chat here. So it's the Architect Marketing Institute. If you did a search for Architect Marketing Institute, and the website, I'll put in archmarketing.org. We consider ourselves an organization as opposed to a commercial enterprise, even though, Richard and I make our living and we have a team of people who we pay, but we see ourselves as our mission is to raise the bar for architects to help all of you, whether you're an architect or a building designer, interior designer, help you communicate your value and ultimately have a more fulfilling life doing projects that you love working on. So
organization is great. Eric and Richard are both great contributors. Richard's a great coach. So that is just worth the price of admission to begin with. But the members are so active in the group, and there's a weekly Slack Zoom call where we're really sharing a lot of great ideas, and it's just knowing from all across the globe the best and brightest minds on how to market yourself as an architect is truly invaluable. And I started the presentation talking about collaboration, and I truly believe in that. So the offer is out there. Anybody who's got they want to partner with or have questions about, I'm available. Contact me and we can figure something out.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Let's actually take a couple of minutes. Just say you have a consortium. You help architects who, well, as a group of architects, when you have larger projects, when you have overflow work, this team or this group that you trust and can get work done. You're using the Graphisoft BIM server for at least some or much of your shared collaborative work. Are you sharing profit on it, or are you just hiring each other like, hey, I'll pay you X dollars an hour for, because I need this done? How do you handle that?
Yeah, we have a kind of a partner member group rate, an hourly. So we just keep track of hours on a project and pay each other according to how much we've used. And that the production is a good part of that. But really, again, it's the really talented group of people that understand working there, and they're sourcing projects at different locations. We have someone who's really good at interior projects. I primarily focus on exterior architecture projects. And we've got somebody who's a design build. Did I lose? Hello?
Yeah, you're still connected. For some reason, the webcams all went off.
I lost your camera, yeah.
Yeah, and it isn't letting me put. Oh,
there
now it came back on. That's odd. Anyway, so how many people roughly are involved at any given time?
We've had as many as 8 part of the group, but it's very scalable, and we're kind of feeling our way through. There's a lot of trust that goes into this, and so everyone has their own workspace, their own folders, commingling projects, and you can't see any project you're not assigned to. So we do have those protections. So it's kind of a growing project.
What do you call this group?
We haven't named it yet.
Okay, so it's not really a business. It's a joint venture among fellow travelers. Okay.
Right.
All right. And if someone wants more information or possibly wants to join, or hey, I have some extra work, I need to get it done. Can your team help? How would they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
You can get through my website is MEB Architect, my initials, mebarchitect.com. I think I've got a closing screen to show contact. Yeah, so mebarchitect.com, or you can reach me on my landline, 847-412-0692.
On your website, I assume there's a contact form or an email address?
There is.
Yeah, okay, great. So that's how to reach Mark. Obviously, I can also be a liaison if you want to just email me, and I can connect you up to Mark. So Mark, I'm so delighted that we were able to fit this into your schedule. We were just talking last week about something else, actually about the architect marketing stuff, and I said, hey Mark, we haven't had you on Archicad user for a while. Could you consider presenting? And said, yeah, of course. So I mean, you can tell this guy is wants to contribute to the community. The whole construction, affordable housing is one example, but today taking the time to show your work, we all appreciate it so much. So there's a few more questions here. So Suleiman Laman says, any suggestions for a structural plugin for Archicad? Mark, do you have any suggestions related to structural?
So if I'm doing the structure, so I sometimes do my own structure, rarely. Oftentimes I have a structural engineer who will give me PDF red lines on my backgrounds, and then I just use Archicad parts, columns, and beams to represent that. And of course you can incorporate, if your engineer is communicating a structural set, you can put a PDF into the set, embedded into your set. I don't know of any plugins that do much more beyond like calculations. I have worked with Riverstone in Boise, Idaho, and they're, as far as I know, the only Archicad structural engineers that exist, and they're phenomenal. And they will be able to work with you in a BIM cloud environment. They host their own, or you could get a license for them and work them, and they will act as if a member of your team. So they'll create a structural within your Archicad environment, but it'll be their own layers, their own layouts. But yeah, I think, and I know there are some plug-in add-ons for structural. I just haven't embraced those or found a need to get into those.
Mm-hmm. I know that Graphisoft is developing more and more integration with structural. I wouldn't be surprised. I have no inside knowledge. I'm totally on the outside like all of you. I'm not a reseller. I don't get any confidential information, but I do see that there's movement within the Nemetschek group to provide more interoperability. So some of you may not know that Graphisoft as a separate company was bought back in, I don't know, maybe 2008 or 9 or something like that by Nemetschek, the Nemetschek group. Nemetschek makes its own 3D architectural software called Allplan, but they have a number of different software products. One of them is called SCIA, I think, SCIA, something like that, structural something, widely used in Europe. And they have a variety of different tools. So one of the things that I saw, in the last couple of years is that the CEO of Graphisoft, Victor Varkanyi, actually moved over into a position in the larger umbrella Nemetschek group. And so he's no longer running Graphisoft. He's coordinating multiple tools within the Nemetschek portfolio. And someone else, Hugh Roberts, I can't remember, took over Graphisoft, running that company. Now, what we can imagine is that structural stuff you have to modify the architectural design model to work with the structural models more, in a more integrated fashion. And we've seen that in the last 2 or 3 versions where you can now say that although this beam is offset from that column somewhat, it's not exactly centered on it. Structurally, we're going to say that the load is transferred directly from one line to another line, because these structural models and analysis are based on more like linear points as opposed to the volumes that we think of architecturally. And so Graphisoft has produced ways of essentially codifying how the architectural elements relate to the structural analytical model. So where does this go? Ultimately, more and more direct options for getting structural analysis done directly from a version of the architectural model, with, let's say, a minimum of rework, etc. So we shall see where it goes, but I think that's inevitably going to happen bit by bit. All right.
Yeah, I attended the last BIM conference that Graphisoft put on. It's been years, but I was struck by the number of Revit users that attended the Graphisoft conference, because they were frustrated by the barriers that Autodesk puts up to share between platforms. And
So
Graphisoft has had the focus on collaborate for years.
Joe Archibald put in IonCon in Boone, North Carolina uses Archicad. So go ioncon.com, and I'm not quite sure, is that, are they a structural analysis firm or something? Do you have any knowledge of them?
I haven't heard of them.
Okay, sorry for interrupting. I just saw that. I thought, oh, maybe it's relevant to, I assume it has some relevance to this discussion of structural. There. Caroline asks, are you using the energy model in Archicad at this point?
I'm playing with it. I haven't officially put anything out that's with any authority, but yeah, it's a really interesting tool. You get a green footprint report that tells you how good your design performs. I think it's interesting. So I've shared that with clients, say, hey, not that this means anything, but here's where the model thinks your performance is. But yeah, I think that's an opportunity for growth. I think it's interesting the whole practice of architect under such downward fee pressure, and as a result, I think many architects have been removing services. I think we're in a period right now where the pendulum is swinging the other way. And I think we need to start thinking about what services can we add in that justify a greater fee and a better service.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's among those things.
Okay, Joe Archibald clarifies that IonCon in Boone is a structural engineer, and I'm guessing you didn't say this, Joe, but they must have some compatibility with Archicad. Either they use Archicad or they are familiar with working with Archicad users. And hey, Joe, I know you've been around for a long time. If you'd like to be a guest on an Archicad user, let me know. Just drop me a line. Love to see your work. All right, so I think we've gone through all the questions, and it's been fascinating to see your work in depth, and then also to have some of these peripheral conversations about what Graphisoft is doing and the direction of the industry. So we'll finish up. Everybody stay safe. Pandemic is not quite over yet. Maybe it's the endemic now. But take good care of yourself. I will be on vacation for part of May, for the first vacation since the pandemic. I'm going to be going to Hawaii, celebrating the 1-year anniversary of my close call. Last year I had a heart attack in May, and I had 5 stents put in. Ever since then I've been exercising and lost over 20 pounds. And so my wife and I, my wife just walked in, are going to be going to Hawaii. And so the next Archicad user one will be after I get back. It'll be on May, I don't know, the last Thursday of May. So something like that. That would be the 26th, I think. So thanks again, Mark. Thank you all.
Do they have ballroom dancing in Hawaii?
Do they have ballroom dancing? I don't know. I'm mainly looking at the beach and the swimming with the green sea turtles and things like that. So,
Well, enjoy.
Right. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
those of you who are in the Archicad coaching program, will get started in about 10 minutes on a separate Zoom link or go to webinar link. Take care. Bye-bye.